life in the Middle Ages wasn't as glamorous as it seemed. When we picture royal life in the Middle Ages, the images are almost irresistibly grand. Lavish banquets overflowing with roasted meats and fine wine, jewel-encrusted crowns gleaming in candlelight, towering castles with sweeping views of the countryside, and kings and queens dressed in silks and velvet, attended by loyal servants at every turn. Popular culture has reinforced this vision for centuries, painting medieval royalty as living lives of privilege, luxury, and near-constant celebration. The reality, however, was far less glamorous, and often downright grim. Behind the glittering crowns and stone walls lay a world of discomfort, danger, disease, political paranoia, and relentless pressure. For most medieval royals, power came at an extraordinary personal cost. Their daily lives were shaped by fear of assassination, chronic illness, primitive hygiene, and an absence of privacy that would feel suffocating to modern sensibilities. Far from being a fairy tale, royal life in the Middle Ages was a harsh existence where survival was never guaranteed, and comfort was a rare luxury. Castles were cold, dark, and uncomfortable. Castles are often imagined as opulent palaces, but medieval castles were built primarily for defense, not comfort. Thick stone walls that protected against invaders also trapped cold and dampness. Even in warmer months, interiors could feel chilly and gloomy. A winter turned castles into frigid fortresses. Heating was limited to fireplaces, which were inefficient and could only warm a small area. Smoke often filled rooms, irritating eyes and lungs. Windows were narrow slits designed for archers, not sunlight, and glass was rare and expensive. Most openings were covered with wooden shutters or cloth, allowing wind and rain to seep inside. Furniture was sparse and functional. Beds were stuffed with straw or feathers, which quickly became infested with lice and fleas. Tapestries were hung on walls, not for decoration alone. Even so, drafts were constant, and dampness contributed to chronic respiratory illnesses among royal families. Hygiene was primitive by modern standards. Despite their wealth, medieval royals lived in conditions that would today be considered unhygienic. Bathing was infrequent, not always due to ignorance, but because heating water was labor-intensive, and bathing too often was sometimes believed to weaken the body or invite illness. Personal cleanliness relied heavily on changing linens, using perfumes, and washing hands and faces rather than full immersion bathing. Tooth care consisted of rudimentary powders or cloths, and dental disease was common, even among kings and queens. Toothaches could become life-threatening infections with no effective treatment. Human waste disposal was another challenge. Castles used guardropes, stone toilets that emptied into moats or open pits. These systems often contaminated water sources and contributed to foul smells and the spread of disease. Rats and insects thrived in these environments, carrying parasites and illnesses that spared no one, regardless of rank. Disease was a constant threat. One of the greatest dangers of medieval royal life was disease. Medicine was based largely on superstition, astrology, and the theory of bodily humors. Treatments such as bloodletting, purging, and herbal concoctions often did more harm than good. Epidemics swept through Europe with terrifying regularity. The Black Death alone killed an estimated 1/3 of the population in the 14th century, and royalty were not immune. Kings, queens, princes, and princesses died suddenly from illnesses that today are easily treatable. Even common ailments like infections, childbirth complications, or food poisoning could be fatal. Infant mortality was heartbreakingly high, even in royal households. Many monarchs buried multiple children before a single heir reached adulthood, a constant reminder that dynasties could collapse overnight. Food was abundant, but not always safe or healthy. Medieval royal feasts were impressive spectacles, but everyday eating was less indulgent than it appears. Preservation methods like salting and smoking often made food excessively salty and nutritionally unbalanced. Food safety was a major issue. Without refrigeration, meat could spoil quickly. Contaminated food and drink frequently caused illness. Spices, often associated with wealth, were sometimes used to mask the taste of food that was already turning bad. Ironically, the abundance of rich foods led many royals to suffer from gout, obesity, and digestive disorders. These chronic conditions caused severe pain and limited mobility, yet were often accepted as unavoidable consequences of status. Privacy did not exist. Modern ideas of privacy were virtually non-existent in medieval royal life. Kings and queens were rarely alone. Servants dressed them, watched them eat, and even attended them during sleep. Royal beds were sometimes placed in shared chambers, and important guests might be invited to witness significant events such as childbirth or death. This lack of privacy was partly symbolic, reinforcing power and legitimacy, but it came at a psychological cost. Personal thoughts, fears, and relationships were constantly scrutinized. Gossip spread quickly at court, and a careless word could become a political weapon. Political pressure was relentless. Being royal meant living under constant political strain. Monarchs were expected to rule, lead armies, dispense justice, negotiate alliances, and maintain the loyalty of nobles. Many kings ascended the throne as children, surrounded by ambitious regents and rivals eager to manipulate or overthrow them. Royal life involved frequent travel as courts moved between residences to manage territories and avoid depleting local resources. Travel was slow, uncomfortable, and risky. Roads were poor, weather unpredictable, and banditry common. Journeys that take hours today could take weeks or months. Accommodations were often makeshift, even for kings. Illness frequently followed long trips, and accidents were common. Despite the hardship, monarchs were expected to endure travel as part of their duty. Entertainment was limited and often violent. While medieval courts did host music, storytelling, and tournaments, entertainment options were limited by modern standards. Many popular pastimes involved violence, including jousting, hunting, and public executions. Tournaments were dangerous, sometimes fatal, and hunting accidents claimed the lives of several kings. Even leisure carried risk, reinforcing how fragile royal life truly was. Power did not guarantee happiness. Perhaps the greatest misconception about medieval royalty is that power equaled happiness. In reality, many monarchs lived short, stressful lives marked by fear, loss, and responsibility. They were trapped by their roles, unable to escape expectations placed upon them from birth. Love marriages were rare, personal freedom was limited, and emotional expression was often constrained by politics. The crown brought authority, but it also brought isolation. A sobering reality behind the crown. The Middle Ages were not a golden age of royal luxury, but a time when power came with relentless hardship. Castles were cold, medicine was ineffective, disease was rampant, and political danger lurked at every turn. Medieval kings and queens lived lives that were, in many ways, harsher than those of ordinary people, just under greater scrutiny and higher stakes. Understanding the realities of royal life strips away romantic myths and reveals something far more human. If you want to uncover more surprising truths about history, challenge popular myths, and explore the real lives behind legendary figures, stay curious, because the past is far more complex and far more fascinating than it first appears. Like, share, and subscribe for more.